Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Quilting Central Podcast. I'm Angie Dugan from the Quilting Connection up in Wisconsin.
And I'm Cathy Thayer from Fabric Bash in Omaha, Nebraska.
And I'm Julie from Two Chicks Quilting down in Ganado, Texas.
We're so lucky. Remember the last time you watched our episode? If you haven't watched it, you need to go back and watch. Because last time I did not have a voice. This time Julie has what we all had from H&H has been slowly creeping through the industry. So Julie doesn't do a lot of talking this time. That is why. Or if she mutes herself, she's coughing.
Yeah.
We were also lucky last time because we were able to be together in Chicago. So this one we're doing virtually. So we are all in our own stores today.
Awesome. With our beautiful quilts behind us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
it's a good thing we don't have side cameras.
Oh. Yeah, true. Good point.
Because I have a mess on both sides of me.
I have a mess everywhere around me when I walk through a store. It seems like I'm dropping stuff. I don't know about you, but I leave scissors behind and pens and all of that stuff, right?
That's something we're going to actually talk about today, our creative process, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm tucked in my back corner of my shop. There's zippers all around me and cabinets on this side.
Oh, we're letting out all the dirty secrets just a little bit too much. We all look so good. So, Julie, talking about the creative process, what do you think? Where should we start?
Well, I mean, I think we should start, we all are long armers, but there's a step before you can long arm that you have to do to create a quilt, right? Like, what do you do to get that whole quilt process started? And what's your favorite part? Like, I have several favorites, I think. There's a lot to be said about all of them.
Right. Yes. There's more enjoyable, I think, in my world than some others. Some of them, yes, some of them are the necessity to make the quilt look absolutely beautiful. Every single process changes the way the quilt looks all the way through the whole process, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So should we start with the buying process? That's the first step, right? We got to get to the fabric stores.
Oh, for sure. The buying process, the picking process, all those things.
All right. So, Miss Julie, what do you think about what do you as a quilter like to do with your fabrics?
Personally, as a quilter, I enjoy picking the fabric first myself. But a lot of quilters don't have that confidence to choose the fabric, so they rely on kits from shops. So what I like to do personally is I enjoy finding an inspiration, whether I start with the pattern or a fabric line, and then I go whichever direction I need to go. So if we get a new fabric line in, for instance, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I know the perfect pattern for this fabric. And then I can go and pick it. And I love picking the fabric. And that is one thing that, some people just don't have confidence in themselves for. And so we even joke around at the shop. I tell them that that's my title at the shop is I'm the chief fabric picker outer. So that is probably one of my favorite parts about the quilting process is actually planning the project, whether it's a quilt or a bag or whatever it is. I enjoy picking those parts out. So that's what I like.
Miss Angie.
I also really like to pick fabrics as well. I started, of course, with jelly rolls and layer cakes and had it all done for me. That's how I started quilting. And then I fell in love with like a specific fabric. And then I loved picking out all the different colors that would blend and match with that like main fabric. That's how I usually like to do it. And I don't like to follow directions. So I'm not I'm not usually a pattern quilter. I'll kind of find like a block that I like and maybe I'll mix that with like a different block pattern. I'm the YouTube generation, so I am constantly searching for videos and inspiration that way to take these fabrics. And I'm definitely a yardage buyer now instead of a kit buyer, but I'll still buy kits once in a while.
I think I like it all. I think I love the convenience of jelly rolls and kits. Jelly rolls actually, I think, sometimes get me out of my comfort zone because I might not like all of those fabrics that are in the jelly rolls or the layer cakes, but to use them and sometimes to be a little bit more random because I tend to be a little bit more OCD and have to be a certain way. So sometimes with kits and or jelly rolls or the pre-cuts, I like to challenge myself to get outside of my comfort zone. As a store owner, though, one of the most fun things to do is walk out onto the floor and to see our staff just helping people pick those fabrics. Don't you think that's kind of fun, Julie?
Oh yeah. And I like that I can, because when we hire staff, they don't always know how to sew. And they're always, I hire for personality and their work ethic. That's what I hire. I always tell them, I can teach you to sew. That's my job. I can teach you to do whatever I want you to do in this job. But you have to have a personality first. So that's, and the love of sharing with people. And so I like to see my girls grow in that as well as my customers, to where when they're first very beginner and they need help, and then they come in and they've got 5 or 6 fabrics picked and they're like, Julie, will you help me just find this one? And I'm like, well, we're coming there, we're getting there. Like, so it's always very rewarding to me to see my staff as well as my customers start, embracing that ability to do that.
So unfortunately, Miss Angie does not have fabric at her store yet. Maybe someday she will and get to join that. But when you go into quilt stores, do you like watching other people picking out their fabric sometimes too?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's always fun. And Rick always likes to joke that I'm Midwest nice and I'll like help people even if they don't want help. So even if they're shopping, I'll just be like, "Hi, can I help?" And even if it's not my store. But I did work for Sew Boutique Fabric for a couple years and traveled to a lot of the trade shows nationally. And then that was really fun helping people mix and match the different types of boutiques together and create projects out of that too. And I loved all of the different fat quarters that were there because then it was easy to pull those out and lay those out together and see, like, stand back, okay, do these work together? Maybe this one needs to go, and add a different one in. So that was always really fun too.
I love the fact recently, a couple years ago, so Julie and I are part of Symposium, which is a group that gets together and does brown bag mystery quilts, which that's a whole nother level of fabric confidence in picking. But I feel like one of the options that helps us from C&T Publishing is some of these cards that helps us to work with our customers even online now. So I'm loving that fact that we can go, it's just not local. We can reach somebody in Vermont and Rhode Island and help them pick out their fabrics that will match what they already have. And I'm loving those options that we can have even online.
Yeah.
Right, Miss Julie?
Yes, and those cards are kind of like paint chips if you've never seen them. So they're they're like little paint chip cards, and it has the directions in there how to, match color to, different colors together. And then you can go lay those little paint chips out on a piece of focal fabric and figure out which one you think, pulls better.
Right.
So you go
Right.
grabbing 20 bolts off the shelf.
And
But
don't
also
you
it
guys
helps us. Go ahead. I'm so sorry,
go
Angie.
ahead, Kathy? No, you're good. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, but it helps us online that I can send with that paint chip a picture of the paint chip and the fabric back to the customer so they can have confidence in buying that fabric. So
Right.
I'm really enjoying that kind of fun things.
Yeah.
And don't you guys find like taking a picture of all of that collection together and then looking at it through the camera lens, like that usually changes how it looks for me too. I like to look at it
Absolutely.
that
And
way.
here's a little trick on that too. I always take not only a color photo and sit back and look at it, but also it's good to take a black and white, because if you take
Mm-hmm.
a black and white picture, you see the contrast better.
Yep.
And so you'll see if you have one that really like stands out that you're doubting. So the black and white picture actually helps a little bit too.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Thanks, Julie.
That's a really good one. Then the next step, you've already picked your fabric. So next comes cutting.
Cutting. I don't mind so much the cutting. It's probably not my favorite part because it's one of those things that's just, it has to be done. I always like to try, of course, you got to make sure you're using the right tools. And a lot of time as beginners, we end up with whatever we bought at a garage sale or whatever we got hand me down from mom or grandma or whoever. And those tools may not be the best quality. So we get frustrated. And so personally, when I first started quilting, that was my situation. Like I had a little bitty cutting mat. It was like, what, 12 by 18 or something. It was tiny. And I couldn't spread my fabric out. I had to fold it over. So then I had those problems. And then my ruler would slip because it was so old, because it had come from a big box store and it had been used for probably 10 other things other than quilting. And it was always sliding around and messing me up. And so, and I didn't understand at that time either that it's, the blade in your rotary cutter is meant to be replaced. That was a key thing for me when I first started. And so I was like, God dang, I can't cut this fabric. Like I am gouging and fighting it. And so once I, kind of did a little more research, and back then, I think YouTube had just like, man, that's been so long ago. I don't even know when YouTube started, but I feel like I didn't have YouTube then. And anyway,
Wait. Are you saying we're older than YouTube?
I think we are.
I think we're older than the internet.
And so anyway, so that's what I always try to, in my mind, as a shop owner or a quilter that's trying to help a beginner, I have to go back and remember those frustrations for me.
Yeah.
And so when I'm now, I always make sure, when I look at a ruler, I make sure that, okay, it's got a slip resistant back to it. It's not going to slide around on me, or here's something I can add to a ruler that doesn't. I always make sure I have a new blade. And so those kind of things, and using tools that, as you develop your quilting, your toolbox, you add those cool new tools like a stripology ruler that helps you cut strips that are equal, instead of one of them being a scooch over 2.5 inches and one of them being a scooch under 2.5 inches. So that's, cutting is not my favorite thing, but I do appreciate the fact that I've grown in my ability to cut properly, because really that's kind of where I know picking fabric, but cutting it properly and accurately is where it all starts to end up with the finished product you want.
And I would say the other thing that's important, and we're going to dive deeper into all of these subjects. This is going to be a general. We're going to go in future episodes over more deep diving and giving more tips and tricks on what we think is important. But one of the other things before even cutting is pressing and sizing. So I think once I started sizing my fabric and pressing my fabric, it made the cutting even that more. Obviously, changing your rotary blade is a very important part of it, but that made it a little bit more enjoyable to get to that point as well.
And what's your favorite sizing to use, Cathy? What do you like to use?
The quilting spray. Oh my goodness, you're asking me on the spot early in the morning.
It's my magic.
Oh yeah, Quilting Magic is really good.
Okay.
Yes, I don't have one sitting here, or I would show it to you.
Right, because it does. A, it has no scent. B, it's economical, and 3, it just works really well. So I think having that no scent, I get tired of a lot of scents. And I'm coming from the massage therapy world where, aromatherapy was really important, but I feel like sometimes some of the scents that are out there are not good.
Yeah, and I'd also like to mention, like Julie said, about having the right size cutting mat. That makes such a world of difference. You need a decent sized cutting mat.
That's like the first thing I really splurged on, was a big cutting mat.
Oh, for sure. For sure. That's a big splurge, because yes, but if you take care of it and you clean it and you do all of that good stuff, you're going to maintain it for a long time.
Yes. So then after we treat our fabric, we cut our fabric, then what's next?
That beautiful piecing.
The sewing, right?
Yes.
Beautiful piecing. So I rely heavily on my 1/4 inch foot. I still love using the 1/4 inch foot, and I don't know if that's right or wrong, but that's what helps me stay lined up. And I'll usually, test it. Sometimes I'll move my needle a little bit if I need a scant, but I rely heavily on that 1/4 inch foot, and I am a big chain piecer if at all possible.
Yeah,
So as much as I can get done in one pass, that makes me happy.
absolutely.
So
So
I kind of agree with Angie on that, because here's what I do. I enjoy um easy piecing, like no brainer kind of stuff, like just sit and do the same thing over and over. I like that, but I also like those challenges, like the intricate paper piecing. I like that as well. But you can't just do that all the time, right? Like because some days you just can't do that. And so I like the chaining, and then I will sit there and look at that pattern, and I will try to figure out, like it's like a game to me. Like, how can I save a little bit of time? Like, how can I not get up from my chair to go to the ironing board for another 15 minutes if I can do this part of this next
yes,
step first? And so I like to do chaining as well. And I do a lot of continuous chaining when it comes to putting blocks together and full quilts together. So continuous chaining is, do y'all do that? Do
yes,
either one of y'all do continuous chaining? Or you could put a whole quilt top together and never cut your thread. Angie, do you do that? Okay. So yeah, that's always my challenge, is how can I break this down so that I can get as many pieces put together before I cut a thread.
that sounds like a great topic for another, because I'm sure we're going to get questions on that. I want everybody to comment below. Do you want an episode just on continuous chaining? So let's talk
Yeah,
about that.
it's like a game show. It's almost like a game show.
So my process is, because I want to get done, right? Because I want to get to the long arm. So my process is of thinking, I'm like, I just have this many of this to do. And I get through all of that, and then I get on to the next one. So I always have to do a process of elimination. And I do that even with my long arm quilting. I'm not one of those that goes back and forth when I quilt. I have to go through every thread color, and when I get to the bottom, I'm done. It is kind of an interesting. So I like that process of, I think all of us have we gamify our piecing, it sounds like, in different ways.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. And then pressing again is very important with your piecing, right?
Absolutely, because that affects your overall appearance of your quilt. It affects the size, how your quilt comes out, whether it's going to be square or not.
Mm-hmm.
It affects your long arming.
Mm-hmm. And there's a definite difference between pressing and ironing,
Yes.
right? Some
Yes.
people really like to push hard and just beat that fabric into submission. And then you sometimes see some stretching. So there's
Yeah.
a definite, I think, like it's a talent to be able to get a good press without stretching it. And I have a hard time, like, once I have that whole block together and I'm trying to press, like, maybe the outside ones, that I don't flip some of the previous seams. So I feel like a lot of the times I really have to, like, pay attention. Which way am I putting my iron down? Which way am which way am I pressing that? And just making sure that I check all of those seams before I move on and make sure that everything is as flat as it can possibly be.
Absolutely. And I don't know about you guys as a long armor, I know a customer that presses well, we get all excited when that quilt comes in sometimes, right? Because those are I was just telling you guys earlier, one of my words that just brings fear to me as a long armor is, can you just jaw stitch in the ditch? Well, those brings fears, because that's a hard job if you don't have it pressed correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were laughing about that the other day, Cathy and I. Forget how we were talking about stitching in the ditch, but I said, your ditch is different than my ditch. So, yeah, so pressing, there are definitely, and I feel like that can be a whole other episode as well. Like the importance of pressing, how to spin your seams when you have a lot of bulk in a block that's coming together, and those sort of things. So,
Mhm.
Ooh,
And
I'm
then
looking forward to that one too. Look at this. We're racking up episodes left and right,
Yeah.
everybody. How does that
Are we making notes? Are we
yes,
making notes
yes,
just
making notes.
next?
We're making notes. We're making notes. And then when the quilt is all quilted, it's time to long
Long
arm.
arm.
Long arm. Oh, the piece is all. The top's all pieced. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
at the top's all pieced, right?
We should
Then,
also maybe, sorry, before we talk about long arm, we should talk about some borders tips.
oh
So I don't
yeah,
know if we want that to be a separate episode, but
it will need its own episode because
okay.
borders are a whole nother subject for when it comes to finishing your quilt. But I do think it's important to talk about it right now. A
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
I've actually done a YouTube video. Julie, have you done a YouTube video on it?
Oh, I've done many, but you
Yep.
know, I have kind of a different. Y'all talk about how y'all do your borders. But kind of let's just touch on it a minute, and then I'll wrap it up.
So are we being honest or how
Well,
it
I think
should
it's
be done?
important. Yes, I think it's important that we be honest, but we also talk about the, you know,
So I
whys.
again
Right.
don't like following directions, and I am one of those. When I put my border on, I make sure it's long enough, I sew it on, and I whack it off because I'm long arm quilting it, so I know I always have wavy and excess borders, but I'm dealing with it, so I'm a rule breaker when it comes to borders, and I'm sorry.
I don't like to do math, so I'm not going to math it. But I go to the mid. I make my border. I fit it to the middle of the quilt, and then I fold it into fours or more and attach it to the side of the quilt. So I go from the part that's the tightest, and then ease it in on the sides.
So
Miss
I'm
Julie.
kind of a mixture. It depends on the quilt.
Yeah.
So if I'm trying to really be fancy, like this one behind me, I'm going to measure in 3 spots across that quilt, and 3, the top, the middle, the bottom. I'm going to take my average. I'm going to get my border to be that average number. I'm going to find the middle. I'm going to match the ends. And then ease it in. Now, if I'm just throwing a quilt together that's, it's a Villa Rosa pattern or, just something simple, I'm like Angie, I'm going to slap and whack. I'm going to slap that border on there and whack it off. But I also know not to be when I'm sewing that border, I don't want to be pulling on one layer versus the other layer more and adding that ruffle effect in there. So I kind of do it a little bit of both ways. But like I said, when I get, I guess my favorite part about putting the whole quilt together, I prefer doing the blocks, because when I start getting to the point of putting the blocks together into rows, especially if it's a big quilt, it's not my favorite part to do. So I'm rushing. I'm like, just get this over with. Like this is the putting the groceries up from going and buying groceries, And so I don't like doing borders, especially on bigger quilts. I get to the point where I'm like, I'm over this. I'm ready to start something new because my ADD's kicked in and I'm thinking about the fabric I picked out for the next project already. So,
all right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or I'm thinking about the quilting design I'm going to put on it.
Yeah.
My brain goes down that path.
So then we're to the quilting process. So
Right.
Some of you may not use a long arm. Some of you may not own a long arm yet. We should throw that in there, yet. But whether you finish your quilt with a long arm, a domestic machine, a stationary quilting machine, or you do it in the hoop in your embroidery machine.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the things that we're going to be talking about when it comes to finishing your quilt applies across the board.
Right. Making sure everything is stable, whether it be on the long arm or pinned, all that good stuff, that it's all 3 layers are stable. So you don't get any folds or some ruffles on the backside or all that good stuff. And folds in your batting, that's the worst too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you got to make sure all of that is stable.
Yeah, making sure your backing and your batting are larger than your quilt top. I get asked that all the time. Why do you need that extra? I'm like, just trust me. It's part of the process. It helps me make a good end result for you. And I like to have at least 4 inches is kind of my rule of thumb. At least 4 inches on the left, 4 inches on the right, 4 on the top, 4 on the bottom. So total of 8 left and right, and total of 8 top to bottom. More than that, the better, of course. But for most of my long arming, I asked for at least 4 inches.
I like 3, but we can talk about great ways to use your leftover backing at another episode. Look at that. We just got another episode. Woo!
Yeah. So I feel like backing your quilt. So I don't know if we mentioned this in the first episode, but I'm fixing to teach on a cruise this next week. And that's what we're teaching about, is we're teaching how you finish your quilt. And so Marley, our long arm quilter, and I are going to be on a cruise with a bunch of quilters, and that's our topic, is how do you finish your quilt, and all of those little steps you do that you have to make that decision after you even piece your quilt,
Right.
It's not over. And if you quilt by check and you just drop it off at the shop to be quilted, that you just don't understand all of the little things that go into finishing that quilt. So I feel like it's important that even if you don't do your own quilting, that you understand those things. So why when we say we need 8 inches more fabric, because going back to years ago, I can remember going, oh, that's good enough. She don't need that much, when I was taking my quilt to be quilted. And I'm sure the lady that did the quilting was sitting there going, she didn't give me enough fabric, So it's important that we all know that and know why, because there's reasons.
And there's reasons that, our store here in Omaha has really concentrated on wide backs and quality wide backs, because your quilt top, you just spent all of this time, your money, and all of this your resources, and to slap a sheet or a cheap backing on there is not necessarily the greatest, because you could have all this kind of shrinkage and all this other stuff. So we've worked really hard here at Fabric Fashion. I know Julie does too, and Angie's does some wide backs as well, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, and to have the good quality wide backs, because the back is just as important as the front. Maybe not as pretty sometimes. Maybe it's a total different feel, but I just think when you look at our web pages and see that the wide backs, that they're good quality, high stitch count wide backs to match your quilt top, because your quilt top deserves a good backing, whether it be pieced or whether it be a wide back or whether it be Cuddle or Shannon, all of that good stuff, right?
Yeah. So that again, there's so much more to that we can get into and dive deeper into. So I'm excited.
Can't wait on that one. That's my favorite.
Yes.
We still haven't got to quilting yet.
No.
Because we have to figure out what batting we're using. That's the next thing.
Right.
Once we do that, and that's a little bit more to talk about. But
yeah, we could do an entire episode on batting types, feels, washability, all of that stuff. Batting is one of my favorite things too to pick up.
But again, there's a lot of great options that are so much fun to talk about, whether you double bat, whether you wool, or whether poly, and different reasons why.
Right.
Yeah.
And do you use batting when you use, minky Cuddle fabric? Do you do that? There's all of those great topics that we get to talk about. So that's another, I love talking batting at the cutting table as well.
Yes.
And then thread color is next.
Yes.
Thread color, then design.
Oh.
Not only, another thing that we're talking about, not only your color of thread, but what weight of thread you're going to use, because you have to decide how you're going to quilt it before you decide what weight of thread you're going to use.
Right. If you're going to do a lot of quilting and do a dense quilting, you want a thinner thread so it's not so thick and heavy and stiff. Right?
Yeah. Man, we've got like a year worth of episodes here.
Are y'all excited?
Oh, I'm so excited. It's going to be great.
So we kind of got off topic of what our favorite thing is to do, how to do these things. So we talked about borders, how we do that. So what is your favorite part about the quilting long arming? Because I know we all long arm. I quilt on my domestic as well. So what's your favorite way to quilt your quilt, and what's your favorite part about it, I guess?
Miss Angie?
Oh, I am a computer quilter all the way. Set that computer up and let it go in that first, like when it comes into that first border and does that first section of the pattern. It makes me so happy to see that stitching being done on there. So I am definitely a computer quilter. I'm learning to be more of a free motion custom quilter. It's not my favorite because it just is time consuming, but I mean, I started way back in 99 and we did not have computers back then. So I was a pantograph quilter to start, and then doing those pantographs over and over helped me build more confidence in my free motion quilting. And now I've transitioned to let the computer stitch out some type of design that I want to learn. And then I stitch over that computer design to help build my confidence with more intricate free motion style quilting. So,
Ooh, awesome. Miss
yeah.
Julie?
I don't get as much time to do the quilting process as I used to when we first started. Because when I first opened my shop, in addition to teaching classes, we did long arm quilting, and I was the quilter.
Yeah.
So, um, but now, like I do enjoy going and getting that. I'm like Angie, planning it out, getting it all going, and then as soon as it starts stitching, I'm like, oh, this is going to be perfect, you know. Um, but that's edge to edge. I have not done a lot of custom work. I've done a couple of things in custom that I would consider true custom. Um, but free motion is not my best work. I actually did a project yesterday and I sent you guys a picture because I had this little tabletopper I wanted to take on the cruise, and I wanted to show our people in the classes that what monopoly thread could do for you. So I wanted to quilt it in monopoly, and it wasn't anything I wanted to put an edge to edge on. So I'm like, I'm just doing this. Like I'm just doing it. And it is not perfect, but it has pebbling, it has stipple, it has echo quilting around the things. And I did okay, but it's not perfect. But hey, I bet $1 I can show it to everyone on that cruise, and they're going to go, oh my God, that's so good. So we have to kind of get out of our own way sometimes with that too. And just know that it is what it is. And you're your worst critic, right? Like
Right.
always.
1,000%.
Probably, I'm in the part of my life right now in my quilting journey that I'm more worried about the next thing. And so when we get to that point, I like to take my quilt over to Marley and say, okay, I think this design would look good on it. I think this thread would look good on it. You take care of it. That's where I'm at. But I do like doing it. It's just, I just don't have that much time to spend on the actual quilting of it. But when I do have those projects, I do get into it and I enjoy doing it. It's just, it takes me forever. Like I have a legit kit. If you guys don't know what a legit kit is, it is a white-tailed deer. It is a full
awesome.
like throw size. It's big. And I have to custom quilt this quilt. And I've sat and looked at it for months now, not knowing what I'm going to do. And I don't know what to do on it. And so picking those designs and figuring it out when you're not super confident with your free motion abilities, because it's, I guess I could computerize quilt it, but yeah, I'm struggling with that one.
So I think I'm going to be the free motion person. I love free motion, but I also love the computer custom as well, because there's some challenges to that are help me. I love to do things that get my brain thinking, and that, like doing a Judy Niemeyer quilt or something of that elaborate quilting pieced quilt top into the quilting itself is a challenge to make, because while you have this beautiful pattern that's made for this beautiful spot, the person who pieced it might not be just as perfect as what that is. So lots of moving around, and I love taking that computer and doing that and manipulating that. I do love free motion quilting. I just did some. I don't get to do it nearly as often as I would like. As all of us have said, we're store owners, so most of the time I'm paying bills and doing all of the quote fun stuff on the backside of owning a business. But I came in yesterday and actually did my jean jacket
Let's
and
see
did
it.
some
Let's
free
see
motion
it.
quilting. Well, I don't know if you're gonna be able to see it yet because I'm gonna wash it, right? So I did triple batting.
Your microphone is on your jacket, Cathy.
Oh, it is. Look at me. I'll put it here now. How's that sound?
Perfect.
So you're not going to be able to see it per se. Oh, you can see this the texture.
Oh yeah.
So I just like to do this just to give texture. I don't
So
like it to be blah.
So
Just
explain for our listeners that aren't watching. Talk about it a little more. What are we looking at, Cathy?
okay. What are we looking at? My jean jacket, and I put my backing on the long arm, put 3 layers of batting, matched my thread, and very carefully did kind of graffiti quilting, just whatever
In,
I wanted. I put a flower
on the
here.
on the back of her jacket, like the inside of the solid back side of your blue jean jacket.
Yep. Let me back it up. Is that better?
No,
Yeah.
you got to be closer.
Okay. Well, just to see where it was on the back
Yeah.
of the jean jacket.
But
But
for
then you can
those that are
start.
just listening and you're not watching a video, on the back of her jean jacket, she did kind of graffiti quilting on it. So it's really cute.
It just more texture. I think that's what I love about the long arming most of all is just the texture. So I love to do the leather, finding antique tablecloths, doing some unique different kind of stuff on the long arm. I do love edge to edge. There's something that is sometimes even more simple edge to edge. One of my most favorite things to do is just put my channel locks on and do straight line stitching. So it can be simple. Everything that adds that beautiful texture is what makes my heart sing. So I'd say I love the computer part, I love the custom part of it, and I love the free motion. So I love absolutely, and I love doing the projects on there. So piecing, surprising because Julie has seen me piece and I am not very good at a retreat.
I wasn't going to tell the story of you putting your Villa Rosa quilt together wrong 4 times.
Yeah, not only once, and then I had to hand it off to a staff member and say, please fix it.
And she said, you're never taking these things again. You're never doing it.
I know. But then I like coming up with unique quilts. So I'm almost finished with my QR code for our store.
Yeah.
So I have that
Like if that works.
Yes,
Yeah.
I know. So I think outside of the box with the piecing, I do like the piecing, but I cannot. I found out being a group of people watching me piece. So I think that was my downfall because there's a stress factor when somebody comes over and looks at my quilt the way I've arranged it. I don't know. They're just puts me on edge.
So
Yeah.
we've all got our favorite thing. There was one thing left, and the elephant in the room, binding.
Yeah. Binding.
Oh, I love binding with my long arm though. That is one of my favorite things to do. It's probably my most watched video on YouTube. Your long arm is holding the whole weight of your quilt for you. So there's no reason to push that through a domestic machine, at least on the one side. I wish I could figure out how to bind it both sides on my long arm, but I don't think that's possible. So I am a big fan of binding on the long arm. I still miter my corners, and then I will do a tuck and fold. So I'll start, I'll have the top of the quilt in my long arm frame again. So I will totally finish the quilt and then I will completely unroll that to get back to that top edge, that first row that I sewed. Then I find the center of my binding and I line that up on the center of my long arm and I pull out to the edges. And that's my first chance to make sure that I'm not going to get one of the mitered seams of my binding in that top left or that top right corner. If it is going to end up, then I just shift that binding left or right to pull that miter out of those top 2 corners. I usually don't measure down to see if there's going to be a miter on the bottom 2 corners because let's face it, I like to gamble. So I'll see.
But it never fails. It's going to hit one of the 4 corners. It never fails.
One of the 4 corners.
Yes.
So you could measure down and then shift some more before you start actually sewing it on. I also really like when customers are, I've done it once, pieced bindings.
Ooh,
Having a pieced binding, then I will take the time to really make sure that I'm planning where those miters are going to hit the corners. And then I do, like I said, start in my top left corner, I'll miter that corner and stitch all the way across that top edge, miter my top right. Then I kind of do like a piggyback back and forth. So I'll come down my right side as far as I can in my throat space, stop and break my thread, move back over to that left side, do that left side as far as I can, roll it forward with my needle down on that left side. Then I can keep doing that left side the next section. So I just bounce back and forth and do both left and right edges all at the same time. Then I'll miter my two bottom corners. Some customers like to do that like final miter sewing on their domestic machine, so I'll leave them tails. But if they don't want to do that, then I have a tuck and fold method. I don't remember who taught me that, but I learned a tuck and fold method, and then that binding is completely attached to that quilt top before it comes off my long arm.
So then do you
awesome.
take it back and hand sew it, Angie? Um,
Oh, ew.
are you stitching the ditch from the front?
I
How do
do.
you okay.
Yeah, I machine sew stitch the ditch from the front to finish, and then I'm putting that flange on the back side, but I pin, 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 pin. So I pin in that ditch to see how much flange I'm getting. I check every pin on that back side to make sure my flange is consistent. And we just hosted Sue Hines at my shop this last weekend, and she has taught a method. It's an Elmer method. So it is Elmer, that school glue, but she was explaining it's not really a glue. Elmer school glue is a FDA food grade starch. That's why you can leave it with kindergartners. You don't have to worry about them eating it or
Eating
swallowing
it.
it.
Right.
Yes. So it's a starch instead of like a glue, but even though it's called a glue. And she was showing how she'll Elmer right on the back side of the quilt, iron that binding so it stays completely consistent. You don't have to use any clips or pins or anything. So my next one, I'm going to try that method and see how that works.
Awesome.
Cathy, how do you like to do your binding?
Um, as fast as possible. No, I mean, I'm starting to get in love with the 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 flange binding and then facing too. I like facing as well for modern quilts, so that's kind of fun. There is something therapeutic about doing the hand piecing sometimes, but most of the time, machine is like the way to go. That's why I love the flange because I can hide it in that ditch there, a little bit on the front, and it adds a little bit of pizzazz. Uh, I've also heard people. So one of the designers in our area, Scott Flanagan, he hates binding, and he teaches this way that he uses fusible thread and uses it with a serger. And then when you fold it back around, you can then press that, and then it does the same thing as the glue.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah. What
So
about you, Julie?
I do mine a little different because I'm a lazy binder and I hate when I say that's my part of the quilting process that I hate the most is the binding. Um, I love piecing it. I get to the borders and I'm like, eh. And then when it gets to the binding, I'm like, I am not doing that. So if I can con anybody into doing my binding, I will do that. That will be my first choice. My second choice is I sew my binding to the back side of my quilt first, and then I press it over and I top stitch it on the top, and I change my bobbin to match whatever my backing fabric is. So if
Right.
my backing is green and my binding is pink, I'm going to put a pink thread on the top and I'm going to green bobbin in the bobbin, a green thread in the bobbin. And so, yeah, you can see my line on the back, but who cares? Like, unless it's going in a competition or, it's something like special. I have hand stitched my binding, sewed it on the front and then hand stitched it on the back. My best friend is very adamant that that's how you're supposed to do it when you enter something in a competition. And, I'm not all about that world. So I do it when I have to, but if I don't have to, I do the machine binding that way. And of course, my first choice is to find somebody else to do it. That's binding.
Maybe that's why we started quilt stores, to find somebody else to do our binding.
We have a joke at our shop, because I always do videos and I say, we did this, like we made this, and we all know Karen did it. And so we introduce Karen as we, because she's my we sometimes. So
That's great.
Oh my
think it's
goodness.
also important to mention that once you attach the binding to either side, or before you even attach binding, the consistency with trimming your excess backing and batting,
yes.
that's how you can get a really good consistent binding, is that trimming. So I like to leave a scant 1/4 inch extra of backing and batting past the edge of my quilt, because then that binding is full. And I usually start with a 2.5 inch binding. That's what I use the most.
Mhm.
So then I'll attach it to the one side. Then when I trim it, I'm trimming and leaving some of that extra backing and batting. So when I do wrap it around, it's a nice, tight, and full binding.
Yeah. And that is, again, a whole other episode. And I don't want to sound like I don't have any ability to teach you guys how to do binding, because I can teach it well. Do I want to do it? No. But I can tell you how to do it.
Right. We'll do a
Love it.
placemat to show you how to do it.
Yes, we're going to do a little mini
Yes.
mug rug. That's going to be my sample to show you how to do binding.
Well, and for a future reference on binding, Miss Angie, like she said, she has this, it's going to blow your minds when I'm going to say this. So just put a little check mark that this is going to be a future episode. She uses a zipper system. And so after being up in her store, because I was just up there contaminating her, so apparently she's got great genes that she doesn't get sick. But she has a zipper system, and she has a way to put the backing or your binding onto the back of a quilt. So we're going to save that magic trick that you can pull out of your hat that is truly amazing, that I can't wait to talk about. So that's a great, that blew my mind when I was up there. I'm like, wait, what?
Yes.
Love
Because
it.
that's why I don't sew mine onto the quilt on the frame, is because I can't sew it onto the back. Because I want to sew it onto the back.
I'll teach
Now
you.
you're going to learn. We're going to show you, Miss Julie.
Okay.
I love it. So after the binding, what's next? Do you guys wash your quilts before you give them? What's your process after the binding? Do you label them?
I forget to label mine. I'm bad at that. I am bad at that, unless it's for something specific that it's very, very, and then I think about it as I'm about to throw it in the washer. Oh my God, I didn't put a label on here,
I do not wash my quilts before I give them to people, but one year I did everybody for Christmas quilts, and I did label them, which was kind of fun, because one of my son-in-law, I made him, I guess, a quilt. It's flannel, black, both sides, with black batting, with black thread, an inch apart, all the way down, straight line stitching. And I did put a little bit of a label on there so everybody would know that it was handmade, because it looks like a blanket. But he's like, that is my favorite quilt ever. And he used it to study when he was going through med school. He would like wrap up in it. But I don't wash my quilts usually, but I try to label as much as I can. Even a little simple made with love, I think, is important.
Mm-hmm.
I saw some cute labels that was like, it said something about, you don't know how many swear words went into this quilt. I laughed so hard when I saw that label. I was like, that needs to go on my quilts.
1,000%. There's so many cute little labels now that we could add on to them that doesn't take a lot of time, that go straight into the binding, that I think is really awesome to see that come out in the industry.
Yeah.
We do the way we do our labels at the shop, especially like when we do them for customers, we embroider them on just a square, and then fold that square into a triangle and put it in the bottom corner. And so it's sewn into the binding, and then they just have to whip stitch that little fold. So that is a cool way to, and I haven't done it yet, but we did have a national educator at the shop a few months ago that gave us a idea of how to use designer through Handy Quilter Designer to actually stitch your label onto your backing before putting your quilt top on.
Oh,
Ooh.
that's interesting. That'll be a whole new episode. I'm writing that down.
I keep going back to that in my mind, thinking, I've got to get that done. I've got to get that done. And it is mind-blowing when you see it.
We're going to talk to see if I can get that to my other machine that we have as well. All right, guys. Guess what? We're at almost an hour.
All right. So next episode, I think we will be diving into some really fun stuff. And I can't wait. Like, this is, we have so much content for you guys. It's not even, it's crazy.
I'm excited about this journey. This instead of me quilting and working at the long arm, I get to talk to you guys about this. And so this does make my heart sing to share with everybody. We want you guys to tell us what you want. So let us know below.
Thanks so much for joining us here at the Quilting Central Podcast. We've had an amazing time today sharing today's quilting stories, tips, and ideas with you.
Absolutely. Whether you're stitching your first quilt or your 50th, we're so glad to have you as part of this wonderful quilting community.
Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you enjoyed today's chat, we'd love it if you could leave us a review or share the podcast with a fellow quilter.
You can also find us on social media for more quilting inspiration, updates, and even behind-the-scenes fun.
And remember to send your quilting questions or stories our way. We love hearing from you. You might even be featured in a future episode.
Until next time, keep stitching, keep creating, and keep spreading the love of one quilt at a time. Bye for now.
Happy quilting!
Happy quilting!
Happy quilting!